So when we are solving systems using any method from word problems, the first thing you always have to do is write the system when you're presented with a word problem. And that is probably the most challenging part about solving systems. So I came up with a few steps for us to follow when we solve systems, and hopefully this will help you out and organize your thoughts. So first, always you want to read the problem. And it says, a total of $9,000 is invested in two funds, paying 5% and 6% annual interest. The combined annual interest is $510. How much of the $9,000 is invested in each fund? And so if you read over off on the side in the box, I said, identify the important information in the word problem. And so I'm going to go ahead and highlight the things I feel are important. Well, I see I have a total of $9,000. There's two funds paying 5% and 6% interest. Our combined annual interest is $510. And then I also notice it's asking a question. And my question is, how much of the $9,000 is invested in each fund? And so that's really what it's asking us to do, but we have a lot of steps to do before we can get there. Step number 2 then says to define your variables. And so we call it writing a let statement. And so off on the side I'm going to say let x equal and y equal. And I'm going to say that x is going to be the money in the 5% fund. So it's going to be how much I put in that 5% fund. And so y is going to be how much I'm putting in the 6% fund. Because remember, it's asking how much of my $9,000 is in each fund. So I'm splitting it up into x in the first fund and y in that second fund. So I defined my variables. Then we have to write that system of equations. So this I find to be one of the most challenging parts for people who are new to this. We have to write a system. And so we want to look at the information in the orange and think about what it's meaning. It's saying a total of $9,000 is invested between the two funds. If we have X dollars in the first fund, Y dollars in the second fund, altogether, that can only be $9,000 because that's all we put in. And so we can say that if we add X plus Y, it should equal $9,000. The second part, so we talked about that total of $9,000. And then it says the funds pay 5% and 6% interest. And our annual interest all combined was $510. So we want something equaling that $510. And so interest is how much money you're earning on what you put in, or what you put in. And so I'm getting 5%, which remember it has to be as a decimal, so 0.05% on the money I put in the X fund. And I'm also going to get 6% on that Y amount of money that I put in the other fund. And altogether, it equals $510. From our system, we can then solve it by substitution. You could solve it by elimination. Or you could solve it by graphing. And remember, if you're going to solve by graphing, we need to figure out what both equations would look like if we set them equal to y when we do it by graphing. My next example that we're going to set up says the following. George buys 7 quarts of fluid. X quarts at $3, Y quarts at $2 per quart. And then here's our question. Find X and Y if he spends $16 total. So I actually, as I read it, I did step number 1 where I identified my important information to save myself a step. Next, I need to define my variables. So let x equal something and y equal something. And the nice thing is this problem actually kind of does that for you. It says x quarts at $3. So it's the number of quarts at $3. So it's how many quarts we're buying for $3. And then y is going to be the number of quarts at $2, because that's how much we're spending on each quart. So now that the variables are defined, we need to write that system. And so I like to put my system always in the curly bracket, but I have to think of what equations we're going to write. We know altogether he bought 7 quarts of fluid. So if we take how many he bought at $2 and how many he bought at $3, or vice versa, altogether he buys 7. So altogether x plus y is 7 quarts. Then it says the x quarts are $3, the y quarts are $2. He spends $16 total. So we know it's going to be total is $16. And then it's taking how much it is per quart and how many quarts you bought. So $3 for every x quart and $2 for every y quart is what he's spending, and altogether he spent $16. From there you could solve by substitution, elimination, or graphing, which is what we're doing in class. Then you would label your answers. And finally, I want to talk about an example like this. Here, the problem says that the sum of two numbers is 6, and their difference is 4. And so if we follow our steps, first we're going to highlight. So I see the sum of two numbers is 6, and I also see their difference is 4. Two very important aspects of information. However, when it comes to defining x and y, you need to think about what is the question asking. Remember, it's asking to find the unknown values. And that unknown aspect is really important. We need to find the unknown values that make the statements true. So we can confidently say that when you take their sum, you get 6, or when you take their difference, you get 4. So whenever I see problems like this where it's just talking about two different values, you need to call one number or one variable or unknown the larger number and one the smaller number. So I always do x is my smaller number, and y then is going to be my large number. You could flip it around where y is the smaller one and x is the larger. That does not matter as long as you tell me which is which. From here, now that we wrote the let statement, we highlighted our information, we need to write our system. And so we're going to write one system for the purple and one for the blue. It says the sum, which we know is adding, of our two unknowns is 6. So it should equal 6. Then in the blue it says their difference is 4. So we know when we take the difference it's going to be 4. But here is where you have to be careful. If we have one number that's larger and one number that's smaller, you have to think about the difference is a positive value. So you have to make sure that the bigger number is in the first spot and we're subtracting away the smaller number so that we get a positive answer. So we have to put this as y minus x equals 4. If I would have done x minus y equals 4, that couldn't be true because no matter what x and y are in the end, if y is bigger, so let's say y is 8 and x is 4, because one number is bigger, one number is smaller, you're going to get a negative answer. And that will be true no matter what values you plug in for x and y. You'll always get a negative answer. Think about if we plugged in 3 and 12. You would get negative 8. And so we have to make sure that the larger number, whether it's your x or y, that's different for everyone, has to be first, and you have to subtract the smaller number from that.